Hey, what's up, guys? This is Dion Brown, and you are watching and or listening to Man versus Brand. So the word of 2022 might have been mental health, right? Everyone was experiencing some sense of like reformation around what they believe to be mentally healthy, to be mindset friendly, to be positive thinking that was non-problematic in the way that it allowed for us to have success. Another word that I think is somewhere creeping in that top 5 list is innovation. How much of what we create can be redefined, restructured? How many problems that we face currently have solutions that are undefined as of yet? How are we innovating things not only in the market, right? Like a new app of some kind, but innovating in our own lives. Like, how are we restructuring families, creating companies, doing the things that we need to do in order to progress? Because inherent in innovation is this idea around progression. It needs to move us forward. So I'm going to talk to Mike Stemple. He is an author. He wrote Innovating Innovation, which, we're going to talk about that title because I think that title is noteworthy, right? He started businesses, at least 4 tech ones. He's built over 20 startups. He's done enough of the work to have an intelligent conversation around what it is to innovate. Now, you guys know me. I'm going to question everything. So I want to know what innovating innovation really looks like in practice. I want you guys to enjoy the conversation we're about to have. And I want to introduce you all to Mike. Mike, what's going on, buddy? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on this podcast.
Thank you so much, man. So talk to me. What started your journey into developing startups and really embracing this entrepreneurial path?
It started back when I graduated high school. It set me on a trajectory that led to today. I joined the military. I'm ex-Army. I was combat medic. Did very well in the Army, so well that they kicked me out after 2 years and offered to pay a full ride to go to med school and come back as an Army surgeon. So I got through my senior year of college as a civilian on my way to med school when I was in a car accident and I caved in my skull. I damaged the art center of my brain, which unlocked an unlimited amount of creativity. I became a famous artist overnight. You can see some of my artwork behind me. I lived in Denver, Colorado at the time, and 6 months later, after my head injury, I had painted one of the largest murals in Colorado history, featuring John Elway, Dikembe Mutombo of the Nuggets, and Andre Scalaraga of the Rockies.
Okay, pause. Nope, we're not going to do this. We're not going to breeze through this renaissance of your mind. We're not going to do that because I feel like there's something there. So give me some background. Were you inclined to art? Like you said, it unlocked, right? But it also sort of denotes that there was some potential there, right? Because in order for something to be unlocked, it has to inherently exist in that space. So did you recognize that you had this artistic path, space, concept, ability, or is this something that truly was birthed post the accident? Like, did you see sort of this level of genius within yourself, or was this something that sort of happened when this incident occurred to you?
That's a very good question. So my background's in psychology now, so I'm going to give you kind of the psychological explanation of what happened. I had a proclivity for art in high school, right? So I took art in high school, and I was okay. I mean, nothing spectacular. Post car accident, post head injury, I became massively better. In fact, I had a neurologist and a psychiatrist that were treating me that actually had me go back and redraw something that I had drew in high school. And the difference between those two was impressive. It was markedly better. And so what I think happened is when I damaged my brain, I lost all the filters of who I thought I was supposed to be. So if you think about it, I'm where little kids were trained through our schooling process, and then in the military, and then in college, all these things that we go through, we start adding filters to our perception of reality and filters of who we think we are. So I think I was always creative, but what was in place was a lot of expectations of who I need to be. So I thought I was going to be a surgeon. I thought I was going to be a soldier. I thought I was going to be certain things. And in those in those careers, I don't think creativity is as paramount as logic and science is. So I think what really happened in my brain is not some magic thing that unlocked. I actually think it's more subtle. I think I just forgot to have those filters in place. And I returned to probably the creativity I had when I was 5 before I entered the schooling system.
So, folks talk about neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, this idea that the brain has the ability to create new pathways, new ways of approaching problems. That it looks at things that no longer serves it and produces some pathways that move it in the direction in which it sees the body or the mind or the person pursuing. So, did you find that the skill set that you had was something that you were consistently building upon after you started to move in that direction? Or was it just kind of like this massive aha moment, right? In which you got all of this skill set and you were just processing your way through it, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think one sort of defines like a way of building upon a skill set, while the other is kind of this realization, and then whatever happens after that realization occurs.
Yeah, it was half a lifetime ago when I had my head injury, and I've had a lot of time to think about that. Was it inspiration from God, or was it just an unlocking of an innate ability that I had at birth? And I think it's the latter. I think it was this. There's a study that was done at the people at NASA where they tested creativity in children.
Yep.
And they found that kids at 5, 4, and 5 test as creative geniuses on this scale. And so they decided to track the kids as they go through life. And they found that the more schooling a child gets, the lower and lower they score on the creative genius scale, all the way down to less than 10% when they graduate from college. And so what I think happened to me is I forgot everything that I learned in school when it comes to my role in society. I reverted back to a very primitive stage where creativity was something that was approachable and doable and fun. And there was no expectations on me. I didn't have to be in the military anymore. I didn't have to be a doctor anymore. I was literally in physical therapy every day from the physical aspects, and my mind was released from all the burden of who I thought I was supposed to be as an adult. And I think that was the big aha moment I had, especially about what I do now when it comes to ideation and creation of businesses. So much of people's mindset and the limitations they place on themselves are self-limiting. They actually are choosing the limitations. I think every person, it's innate within all humans to be a creative powerhouse if you just allow and tap yourself into that.
So I just want to, because this is also timely, I want to recommend all you guys that are listening and are watching that you go watch my T. Keaton Woods episode of Man versus Brand, where we talk about this specific genius factor. We talk through a whole episode about what it is to reclaim your genius that you had when you were 4 or 5, based on the study, Mike, that you referred to. So there's an episode that's dedicated to this. So you were leading us down a path, and we made it to the accident, right?
Okay.
And so I stopped you in order for us to delve into what occurred to you when you were making this great artwork. Talk to us about what happened after that.
Well, what happened is I started working with pro sports teams. And so I had to get their permission to draw all these famous athletes on the side of buildings, and pro athletes started wanting me to do artwork for them, of them. And I started understanding a little bit more the power of brand, uh, and just what a brand was and what it meant, both on the corporate brand, like the Denver Broncos, and also a personal brand, like a John Elway, and the amount of effort that goes into protecting those brands. And so I kind of got a behind the scenes look as one of my first careers I had, doing artwork for these teams. And I learned a lot from that that would influence the next phase. So I did artwork for a few years. And then my younger brother graduated with a computer science degree and told me about this thing called the internet. He says, you should really take a look at it. And so I dove into the internet and looked at how web pages were created, and I was just fascinated. Because when I right clicked and inspected the page and I saw the source code, the science of design, it just unlocked something in my brain. It allowed me to be both left and right brained. It allowed me, the scientist, the trained scientist in me, the coder, to work with the designer, the creative aspect of me. And so I taught myself to code, and my brain was just cycling through 1,000 ideas every day. And I picked one, and I got my first company funded in 2000. My first 3 companies I built all failed, spectacularly failed. But I learned a lot from them, and I crafted my next business in 2004. And that one is still in business to today, and it's a company called Skinit. It was stickers for cell phones and laptops. So I created that in the basement of my house, and now it employs hundreds of people, and millions of people have bought skins over the last 15, 16 years.
It's amazing, man. So talk to me about your journey as an author, right? There's a bunch of folks that have written on innovation and what that looks like. For me, one of the most influential books in my own personal journey was the Ken Segall book, Insanely Simple. And it was about sort of the process of innovation in Apple, specifically while Steve Jobs was there, and sort of what he went through in terms of determining the early parts of their marketing program and product design and all that stuff, right? But there's a ton of books out there, right? Like there's a plethora of books that are talking about innovation. So what inspired you to write yours, Innovating Innovation, and what do you feel like is sets that book apart from other books that are also talking about a similar topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what separates my book from other books is it's written for predominantly corporate innovation teams, large company innovation teams, from an entrepreneur's perspective. And so for the last decade of my life, after I had multiple successful exits as an entrepreneur, I've built over 20 companies and had 40% of them positive exits. I started about a decade ago. I started having large companies, multinationals that I've worked with in the past, ask me what was my secret sauce. I mean, how could I do what I was doing? Because a lot of my companies I build were white label technology providers for large brands like HP and Dell, T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon. They were all in the skins business. I powered all their stickers for laptops and cell phones. So these big companies were asking me, why you? What is it that you see? How do you see the opportunities? How do you build things so fast and get them to the market and then scale them so rapidly? Teach us. And so that started the career that I'm in now, where I'm an entrepreneur in residence for hire for large multinationals. And so now I'm on the corporate side of innovation. And so I get to see unlimited budgets, unlimited talent, and a limited time horizon, how that crafts innovation. But the book, Innovating Innovation, is the lessons I've learned that I've taught corporations on how to think and act more entrepreneurial. And so my book is, I always make the joke that if you were going to learn to shoot a rifle, would you rather shoot from an NRA instructor who's gone through all the training and courses on how to be a great rifleman? Or would you rather learn by a Navy SEAL, someone who's been there and done it in crisis and in hard times? Would you rather learn from that person or the certified instructor person? And most people would say, I'd rather learn from the Navy SEAL because I'm going to learn all the tips and tricks and hacks to be able to be an effective killing machine. And so that's why my book's different, is it's built on all of my personal experiences that I've had. Now, I'm not saying the other point of view isn't valuable. I always call that the Malcolm Gladwell view, where he comes in and collects a lot of information and distills it down into something that's accessible to people. My book's a little bit different in that it's just first-person knowledge from the trials and tribulations that I've gone through.
Got it. So I think something aside from the great points that you shared, right? That's interesting, as you said, you had a 40% positive exit rate as an entrepreneur, right? Like so many folks believe, specifically serial entrepreneurs, believe that their job is to leave everything with some level of positive feedback, right? I've learned in my own course that corporate takeover, company massive shifts is like a whole different beast than starting a company, which is a whole different beast than scaling a company, right? Like there's just different sort of pathways to this entrepreneurial journey, right? Where you may find yourself in business with a startup that it sort of works out or it doesn't, right? So what's some of the things that you learned about yourself as you were in transition from one company to the next? Like what's some of the things that you learned about who you were as a person, who you were as a leader, who you were as an entrepreneur, as you were specifically transitioning? Because it's easy to talk about who you were while the business was happening, right? But it's in the quieter periods that I think a lot of us really learn about ourselves, is in the in-between points, right? Where things aren't quite assured, where we are decompressing or thinking back to the experience we just had and really looking forward to the experience that we want to craft for ourselves in the near future. So what have you learned about yourself in those in-between periods?
Yeah, as you were speaking, two things popped to mind. The first is the right mindset, which is I failed more than I succeed, and I will always fail more than I succeed. But the game, the true game, if you're an entrepreneur, this is the game that no one tells you, is to make your successes way more than your failures. You might have fewer, but make sure the gravitas of them is greater than that of failures. And that led to the second piece, which is my 200-hour rule. So I come up with a lot of ideas, and I teach this in corporate now. I start tracking from the minute I write down an idea and I vet it through a very short process, that I start working on it. So if I'm coding something or I'm designing a product, whatever it might be, I keep 200 hours on the clock. And so for me, in 200 hours, I can come up with a great pitch deck, the story, the brand, and get initial market validation. That's just because I've done it a lot. But the average person, let's just say 200 hours, you should be able to get something out there to a customer to show them, even if it's a mock-up or a prototype. If I do not see significant traction, and significant traction to me is people raising their hand and saying, I want to be a part of this. I either want to buy the product, I want to partner with you, I want to introduce you to people. If I'm not seeing significant traction, and my mom doesn't count, my wife doesn't count, it has to be people who don't know me and the product, right? So I got to have significant traction. I kill the idea. What I mean by killing the idea is I no longer waste my time on that idea. I transition it to somebody else, or I just tuck it away and move on. And that's why I've had 20 companies and so many failures, is because I've only invested in the last dozen of them 200 hours.
Okay.
And if I'm not getting traction, I move on.
So let's talk about 200 hours, right? Because in the space, in the entrepreneur space, right, we have like so many different segments. We have full-time entrepreneurs, we have serial entrepreneurs, we have one-time business owners, right? So we have mompreneurs, which I've never actually tried to pronounce, I've only read. We have part-time entrepreneurs. We have a gambit of folks, and a lot of what they're main determination is time, right? Like the amount of time that they have available, and or the thing that is also a time consideration, right? Like mom entrepreneurs, which I'm butchering completely, are a specific segment of women who are entrepreneurs and our moms and are balancing sort of this schedule. So when we talk about 200 hours, are you putting a timeline on the 200 hours, right? Because 200 hours is a fixed number. And then there's also a consideration of time. And time says 200 hours can be accomplished in 3 weeks. 200 hours can be accomplished in 3 months. 200 hours could be accomplished in 3 years. So is there a sense of also time, or some sense of end point, right, within a time constraint that this also considers? Or is it truly just 200 hours as you would then apply it?
Yeah, it's 200 hours because sometimes I'll get down a path with an idea and something else comes up in my life, a
Okay.
consulting client or a crisis or even a vacation, an unexpected vacation. And so it's 200 hours in aggregate for that idea. And the reason why I picked 200 is that's my personal event horizon, where I've seen the most pain for myself psychologically is when I've stayed on ideas past 200 hours without significant traction. I'm The self-doubt starts to creep in a little bit more, and my psychology changes. I get depressed more easily. And so I have a mindset of abundance. It's trivial for me to come up with 100 business ideas in the next 2 hours. It's just trivial. It's my skill set. It's something I've developed my whole adult life, is to be able to ideate effectively and fast and come up with good ideas. What I've found through all my teaching, the 15,000 students who've taken my courses and I've mentored in big programs, is most people aren't matching ideas to themselves. They come up with an idea and they think they have a credible claim because they invented the idea and it's for them. It's their idea. I don't have that. I think I might be the vessel to birth the idea, but the idea itself, if I'm not able to squeeze out traction, that doesn't mean that I couldn't give it to you and help you and transition it to you, and that you could spend 200 hours on the next phase of it and squeeze out the traction necessary. Because that
Pause,
idea might not have been mine.
pause, because I think that's actually something that feels genius, right? Is the idea that the 200 hours is also applied to a specific thought process or a specific person thinking it through, and it's not cumulative in the way that, like, I may spend 200, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't now spend 200, because my 200 may not necessarily be equivalent to yours, right? So meaning, like, you may come with a breakthrough in your 200 hours that I didn't reach in mine, and both are valuable, right? In the way that I was able to recognize in my 200 that I needed to allocate resources and or pass this thought to someone else. And your 200 um, isn't considered not valuable, or is valuable, because whatever progress you take in that idea that I wouldn't have originally arrived to is considered momentum, right? Or movement. So I think there's something really, really cool about the idea that the 200 hours isn't just sort of applied to the entirety of the idea, but specifically to one person's approach to the idea.
Yeah, and I'm going to blow your mind with this one because I think of ideas aren't just tangible things we create, right? It's just not this phone, or it's not. I think relationship are just ideas. So think about this: if you're dating right now, you can learn a lot about a person in 200 hours. The first 200 hours you spend with someone in a serious relationship or developing to insinuation, if you put a 200-hour clock on it and a go no go on it, people would be much more happy. And think about this: I might be dating someone for 200 hours and get to the end and just know that she's not perfect for me, but I might understand her enough and like her enough and care for her enough to introduce her to a close friend of mine who then their 200 hours together starts. And so the 200-hour rule is something that I think more people should think about, because the most precious thing we have, I learned this as a combat medic, is time. Our lives aren't guaranteed. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. You started off the show about how 2022 was a year of mental health. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing, we're not all going to be healthy forever. And so time is the one thing that we can't create more of. We can arbitrage it. We can try to have the perception of it. But money and talent are two other things that I always talk about: the three T's: time, talent, and treasure. Those three T's collapsing on idea is what makes it go. Time, talent, and treasure. But time is the one that we just can't manufacture more of. And so my personal time, as I'm getting older now, is becoming more and more scarce. It's becoming more and more valuable. And so I'm very aware of my time. Now, for you, it might not be 200 hours. You're a younger guy. It might be 300 hours or 400 hours. But having an expiration date built into the very start of the ideation process will give you a sense of peace, because you're not going to fall into the trap of delusion, where you start believing the hype of the thing you're creating, and you're getting all this positive feedback from your friends and family who don't want to see you fail, and you pursue something beyond its expiration date for you. And what I actually believe is you're blocking someone else from taking that idea who it's rightly for. That your job is to be a vessel in a certain period of time to shepherd an idea further down the value chain.
I mean, listen, when we talk about connectors, right? Like, there's a part of being a connector that speaks, I think, directly to what you're talking about, right? Is that sometimes we think of connectors as introducing people to people, when sometimes being a connector is introducing people to ideas.
Yes.
Or people to business strategies, or people to business types, right? And so when we think about connectors, we tend to just think about it as interpersonal relationships. But some of the greatest connectors that I know connect people to ideas, connect people to philosophy, right? That allow them to move an idea forward. And I think when we do that, we start to operate in our highest selves.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think about the term maven when it comes to a connector of humans, connector of people, kind of a matchmaker. But I think if you extend that out to my belief of the ideas are beings, they have a soul, they develop a soul. It's one of the problems I have with corporate innovation is they don't allow the souls to develop in the products they're creating. And we could talk about that if you like, but I believe ideas have souls. And my job is to shepherd ideas down a value chain, allow them to grow up. And I'm not selfish enough to think just because I came up with the idea that I get to make the ultimate journey all the way to the end. I suck at operating a company. I know that. I'm not a good operator. I don't like having employees. I don't play fair with other people. But I am really good at the ideation phase. And so I'm good at birthing ideas. And I'm really good at coming up with ideas. I have a notebook on my screen right here full of ideas. Now, I could see that as a form of currency, and I could hoard them or trade them or sell them. But I think that's not my job. I don't think that's any human's job. If you believe that you are an ideator and you have that it's your birthright to be an ideator, to invent the next, then you have an abundant, never-ending supply of ideas. So why would you hoard any of your ideas and prevent other people from finding the thing that might be their calling, that might give them immense joy? It's just a perplexing thing I see right now with people hoarding ideas.
So, to your point around folks having tons of ideas, I think what comes to mind for me, and I don't know if you watch this, is Glass Onion, where so much of the Netflix show, Glass Onion, is a part of the Knives series, and it talks about this sort of genius where the genius is in the likelihood of an idea working out, right? So if you spit out 50,000 ideas, right? Two of them will have happened, right? And if those two are significant enough, to your point around sort of the weight of what works, then you become genius, right? Right. And in a way, like people then sort of flock to you for the ideas, kind of disregarding all of the ones that didn't work out. And I think that in this era, we start to question what defines genius, right? Like some people are spouting out stuff and it feels like it is predictive, intelligent. It feels slightly intuitive, right? Like there's something else going on there that may not be quantifiable by logic and or charts or models. And then there's a version of it that feels slightly like it is on the spectrum of mental instability, right? Where there are folks that might have gotten X amount of things right, but who, for everything else, seems to be completely off the mark. And then painting them with this broad stroke of genius may be problematic because of all of the other things that are sort of occurring. So, where do you see that as a person who is developing ideas, but also seeing the proliferation of ideas in the market, right? Like, are we giving a lot of attention to folks that tend to be um, producers or givers of ideas that are so fanatical, that are so kind of um, outlying that we become interested in them, and we're missing a lot of the folks that have boots on the ground, really kind of doing the work to innovate? Or are we listening to folks and just seeing them go through their probability spectrum, where we see a lot of their stuff doesn't really work, and we're seeing the few things that do? There's a bunch of these individuals that come to mind. And so I feel like there's a kind of conversation that's happening around kind of the fitness of the people that we call geniuses, or that we kind of bestow with these sort of tech guru or guru sort of statuses. So where do you see that?
Yeah, all the quote geniuses. I I've been on stage with some of them, and they always get uncomfortable when I ask the question, how much do you equate luck to your success? Serendipity, the the serendipitous chancing. Why did Yahoo fail and Google succeed? Why aren't we ask Jeeving when we go to search? Why is everything Google this? Um, why is the iPhone the number one selling iPhone in the world out of dozens of players that then shrunk down? How much does luck, timing, play into this stuff? And people get really comfortable. I mean, uncomfortable. Successful people get very uncomfortable because they don't like to admit that luck played a role at the very start, that they knew the right person at the right time, that they came up with an idea and pitched it to the certain person that connected them, as we were talking earlier. They get really uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the things that we value celebrity so much, but we're missing one layer underneath that is is the celebritization of genius, or everyone's opinion is valuable. Is that really distracting us from the true creators in the economy, the true people who are coming up with ideas? It seems like if you have a powerful, loud voice, if you're an influencer, your ideas somehow matter more than a young couple kids in college who are building the next novel. And I love that word, novel, new to the world ideas. That's, a YouTube influencer could come up with the exact same idea, and because of their reach and scale, be seen as a genius. But what they might have just did is been paying attention to all the true geniuses, the true people who haven't achieved celebrity yet,
Yep.
and then repackage their idea in a new and different way. And that's one of the things I have to work with investors on, and especially in the corporate environment, is how do we identify the value of ideas, the true value, underlying value of ideas. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I'm thinking of the guy who created OpenAI, the nonprofit that behind ChatGPT, and he was a nobody 6 years ago, and now he's the next billionaire, the next unicorn. The changing his technology that he's been working on will change every industry. And I already see the people layering on top of that with celebrity, with reach, with innovation reach, not innovation reach, but messaging reach, and innovating on top of his success and stealing pieces of it. And I just always thought that was fascinating. So it's one of the things I try to combat. I try to find the untapped genius underneath. And I have the opinion that all these so-called geniuses or celebrities or people who are up on stage, it could be anybody. We have within us this powerful spark of creativity. You go spend time with any 4 or 5-year-old and you will see that spark. And it doesn't go out. It is just filtered with age. And I believe anyone can be on that stage. Everyone has a right to be on that stage if you come up with something novel and new to the world and bring it down to value chain. Even if you're taking somebody else's idea and building on it, that's okay. Not all ideas are created by the person. Not all ideas live forever in the person who created them. Like I don't have any fiscal input into skin it. I'm not a shareholder or anything. I'm immensely proud of that idea I came up with and how it's grown and paid for countless weddings and countless college educations and created fiscal wealth for hundreds upon hundreds of people over the last 15 years. I mean, that's my joy in that idea and its soul, and it's living still to this day. And I think that's one of the reasons why it still is that belief system I built into it from the very start.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Shout outs to Sam Altman. Sam Altman.
Thank you.
CEO of OpenAI. All right. So I want to talk to you about your own preferences. I want to talk to you about what you thoroughly enjoy, because I think that it is easy to sort of identify individuals by the platforms that they occupy. It's a little more transparent to kind of see someone for what they actually enjoy as a human being. Hence the name Man versus Brand, right? Like, what are we putting out in the world? And also, who are we intrinsically as members of the human species? So, on any streaming platform, it could also be a podcast, it could be music, it could be an audible book, it could be movie and or television, but it has to be accessible to everyone. What's something that you have recently engaged in that you thoroughly enjoy?
I'm finding Twitter a lot more entertaining now that Elon bought it. Just seems to be a lot more unexpected. So I'm enjoying that platform a little bit more. I'm fascinated more with second-tier innovators. And what I mean by second-tier innovators is not the CIO or CINO, Chief Innovation Officer of a big company, or the Johnny Ives to Steve Jobs' Apple. I'm looking at the people right below, the people who actually do the work. And I'm fascinated by this next group of innovators that are Sam Altmans of the world that are coming up that will radically change the next 20 years of our lives. I've never been more optimistic about the human species in light of what we just went through, both medically and politically and everything. I'm immensely optimistic about what happens next, because I think all the social media and all the mobile devices and everyone's a photographer, everyone can be a producer, everyone can share content. I think all of that has trained people to tap into their creativity more. And when my wife shows me her favorite TikToks every week, I'm just amazed at the creativity in people.
Cool. So, all right. So second question is on any streaming platform, in all of the vertices that I mentioned before.
Mhm.
What's something that you thoroughly enjoy that people may not equate with you, right? Like, what's
Mm.
something that may not be top of mind for something that you would enjoy, but you in fact really do?
Um, Something top of mind that I enjoy. What's my
You
guilty
know,
pleasure?
something that
Is that what
doesn't
you're
come
saying?
top of mind to others. So, like, this may be like people in your life may not know. It, I guess in a more specific sense, people call it a guilty pleasure, but I don't necessarily know if there has to be guilt applied
Yeah,
to it.
I get that.
Um,
Um,
so what people may not necessarily associate with you or may not be top of mind for you, but that
mm,
you actually thoroughly enjoy.
um, well, I read every day, but I've done that my whole life, and I talk a lot about the books I read. I don't read business books though, which is fascinating because I just wrote two. Um, I don't read business books because I don't like it to influence my own voice and my own opinion too much, right? So I
Okay.
have my view of the world like that. I think my biggest new thing is I bought a sailboat, a small little racing dinghy. Seats two people, low to the ground, high performance, um, and it's to fulfill a childhood dream. I made a promise to myself one day I would race dinghy. I would be in a dinghy race. And so I bought a boat from France, most innovative boat I've ever seen. It breaks apart into four pieces. It can fit in the back of my car. I can drive it to the dock. I mean, hop in it and go out. I live right on the ocean here in San Diego, and I'm I'm 53 now, and I'm thoroughly excited to go and be a child, to be a teenager again, to go do something adventurous and risk my life a little bit, and maybe risk breaking my life a little bit. And uh, I
So,
find that I'm really excited about that right now.
so to that point, like, what were you watching and or reading or listening to, like, that really kind of prepared you for this new sort of dynamic, right? Like, did you
Mm.
find yourself listening to like sailing podcasts? Did you find yourself sort of like reading up on like the types of innovation that was happening in boats and nautical equipment? Like, what was getting you to the point where you were just like, I feel like I know enough to make a solid decision on this specific vessel and knowing that this specific vessel was going to be beneficial for me.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing in my head right now. Uncontrollable laughter, and not at you, but at me. There's a running joke. Ever since I was a little kid, I've had around a 6 week focus on anything.
Okay.
So like archaeology, and then I was wanted to be this and this and this. And my parents fed my dreams. So every time I fell into it, they would go to the store and I would get every magazine. I'd go to the library, check out every book, and I deep dive and became a subject matter expert in a very small period of time. So it's a skill that I've had ever since I was a little kid that has paid dividends as an adult. The problem with that is I have a 6 week attention span. So that kind of ties in a little bit to my 200-hour rule is I'm constantly cycling through the next. So the reason I laugh is my wife has seen me do this. I bought a sea kayak, then I bought a mountain bike, and then I buy all these different things to be physically active during COVID, and it lasts 6 weeks. And she could tell because I buy all the magazines, order books in, study, do everything, order all the expensive gear in, and then it just sits. I go and do it a couple times and I lose interest. So this time with the sailing boat, she asked me to tap into something I've always wanted to do that I've never done before. And I had to go take a lesson. So I had to go to San Diego Bay and take a lesson. And I really had to go beyond the 6 weeks and make sure it's been something. So what's nice is it took 3 months to manufacture and ship my boat here from France, and I'm still as excited as I was when I ordered it. So that's hopefully an optimistic sign.
Awesome, man. All right. So talk to me, right? If someone who's listening or watching right now is interested in purchasing the book, really understanding and consuming your philosophy around innovation,
Mhm.
where are they going to? Like, is the book widely available?
Mhm.
Is there a website that folks can go to in order to reach out to you to understand
Sure.
more about what you're producing and the content you're creating? Where can they go for that information?
Yeah, so you can just go to Mike Stemple, STEMPLE.com. and that will link you out to everything else. So MikeStemple.com is kind of where I'm funneling everyone now. The book's audiobook, ebook, physical book through Amazon. And then I have a second book that's coming out. I'll finish publishing it here in 2 months. And so Innovating Innovation is the current book, Why Corporate Innovation Struggles in the Age of the Entrepreneur. And the second book is $1 Million Ideator, the surprisingly simple way to come up with $1 million ideas. And so one's more for the startup community, the other one's more for the corporate innovator, but a lot of my startup friends have truly enjoyed the Innovating Innovation book.
All right, cool. Man, listen, I am so glad to have Mike Stemple on Man vs. Brand. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation around innovation, around understanding the power of your ideas, around really pushing forward to really embracing who you are, right? Because the truth is that all entrepreneurs are not equal. Some folks are there to operate, some folks are there to scale, and some folks are there to build out the concept. And so understanding that there is a wide spectrum of space that you can occupy can be the key to your success. It will start to redefine how you think about your own process and your process in relationship to business building. I'm Dion Brown. That's Mike Stemple. We appreciate you all for watching and listening. Man vs. Brand. Talk to you guys soon.